Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. It is a dynamic duo of the GSMC, and we are here to talk about NFL, a little bit of college maybe. We can talk about that. Florida took that L, which, was pretty interesting. A field goal kicker hits a 57-yarder. The other guys miss a 51-yarder, and that's how the game, ended up being. It's a game of field goals out here, Saints missed a big-time field goal at the beginning of the game, which ended up, biting them in the behind. Many other things bit them in the behind. But we're not here to talk about New Orleans Saints football, right now at least. We're here to talk about Brice. Brice, how are you doing, first of all? And how was your football weekend?
Well, I'm doing all right, man. Just another day, bless up, you already know. And I'm good though. Football weekend was it was fine, just watching as many games as I can. I couldn't watch the Sunday night game because since I have DirecTV and the NBC channel is not on there currently because they're going through the dispute. Couldn't watch that, but that's why we have the fantasy app. But outside of that, man, football weekend was pretty decent. Obviously the took an L, but it's all good. Prove draft status, draft stock, eventually get a top player next year and get this thing turned around, win the championship.
Every fan has their ideal situation how to get to the Super Bowl, so it all makes sense.
How about you? How's everything going with you?
Well, the Saints Twitter is in shambles right now. I'm trying to catch up. There's just so much content just being delivered from fans v. fans versus players versus fans, and fans clapping back at players, or fans clapping back at fans or clapping back at players. This is all over the place, man. Sean Payton being very blunt in interviews about Andrews Pete not playing well and all this stuff. It's getting rough. But, it's another day in the life of being a New Orleans sports fan. Zion and them play tonight, Monday. So that's fun. Can't wait to see some defense from Stan Van Gundy. All I want to see is our starters to play 30 minutes. We show some defense, and everything else will be icing on the cake. No injuries. Boom. That's all I want to see, honestly. I want to see Zion not look tired. That's what I want to see. First game.
Hey, man, I got to bring it up, man. They cut LeAngelo today, bro. You going to make the Paul family fortune come true and bring in LeAngelo?
No. Absolutely not. Surprised he lasted that long, to be honest. Because if you're gonna cut some, it looks like he wasn't gonna be there very long. He
didn't play a bit in the preseason. That's all I needed.
I mean, it's literally day one or game one of the preseason, and they cut him. Didn't play. It's not like they brought him on to be a G League guy, apparently, because he wasn't going to be there, so they just cut him. I don't know, man. That's just wild stuff right there. Don't know what to say on that. Maybe he'll get picked up again. Who knows? But, hey.
Well, LeVar, he was doing answering questions today and saying that he thinks Charlotte should pick up the rest of the brothers. They might make a trade for Alonzo, so you better watch out.
Oh, Lord. I don't think he wants to talk to – I don't think Michael is interested in taking any leftover pieces of the LeVar son train. I know that's for sure. But let's bring it back to football. Let's go ahead. The NFC East has beaten – well, besides the Cowboys, the Eagles beat a prominent team. Washington beat the Steelers, and believe it or not, the Giants, before losing on Sunday, beat the Seahawks, who, at this point, we're going to have to start I don't really know how to look at teams anymore during losses. I think sometimes things happen. And, you know, I think 2 times it's pretty bad to lose. Like the Steelers have lost 2 in a row. It's not looking great. They played a really good team in the Bills who seem to be peaking at the right point. And honestly, I think the Eagles caught the Saints when they were a bit flat, and they'll correct some things. Right now it's a little hot. You know, everybody's kind of upset because we expect to be the Eagles team that looks so bad, you know, a week ago that you would expect they would lose out the rest of the season. Like they just look that bad. This shouldn't be happening, right? So the Cowboys, the Cowboys beat the Bengals. Whoop-de-doo. Like, okay. And that's about it. But the NFC East are 9-6, I believe, in the last few weeks, which is the best record among any division in football, as one NFL writer said. Which you know, context is key here. They played a lot within each other and things like that. I think the most important thing is to realize is that the Washington football team and the New York Giants aren't pushovers anymore. Like everybody at the beginning of the season was weird. Some teams were really bad. Some teams were just bad because they haven't played that long and no off season and all that stuff, and they don't have quarterbacks. You know, regular excuses to not be good in the beginning of the season. But as time has come along, they have found their identities as football teams. And I'm not saying that the NFC East are now contenders in any way, but you have to look at Washington. You have to look at the Giants, even though they took a loss, that they might be able to make, you know, a splash, let's say a water droplet in the playoffs, because somebody has to make it there, right? So you can't just say, oh, they're not going to make the playoffs. Like one team is going to make the playoffs. I guess the issue is which team is going to actually make some noise in the playoffs potentially, right? And I might have to put my money on the Alex Smith train, man. Alex Smith, savvy vet, fun story, or should I say inspiring story. And, you know, they're winning games. And they have a coach. And I'd have to say, shout out Joe Judge. We all didn't believe in him. And he's making us pay. So, you know, shout out to coaching, because a lot of people were wondering if the hiring of Riverboat Ron was ever going to actually showcase some real special stuff. And I think that Ron Rivera has turned the Washington football team into a football team, for lack of a better term, instead of just a joke. Like, you know, Mac McCarthy has made the Cowboys kind of a joke. You know, the Eagles, even though Doug Peterson's in the hot seat, you know, beating the Saints might save his job somehow, some way. I don't think it should, but you know, this is the ever living storylines of the NFC East. There's a lot of coaches that have a lot of pressure. I think Joe Judge is showcasing that he belongs to coaching this league so far. Their defense plays pretty well, and their offense just came out pretty flat. And, you know, that's always something that you always have to consider. But the NFC East, Brice, what are you feeling? What's the pulse? How do you feel about this division of football now after a couple of weeks of, you know, better play? Let's put it that way.
I mean, you know, I think overall, you know, teams get better throughout the year. You know, usually you would think you see it more with bad teams because they were bad than good teams. It's easy to think, oh, they got worse if they don't finish the season as strong as they started potentially. But with the NFC East, I think you clearly see teams have gotten better. You're seeing who actually has good coaches and who doesn't. I think that's the first thing. You know, Joe Judge for the Giants to start with. He comes from New England, one of probably, usually in terms of staffs in general, led by Bill Belichick, usually one of the best coach teams year in, year out. They are usually top coach teams. And so he's a guy who's used to attention to detail, being a part of a very well-run coaching staff and organization. And he's brought that to the Giants, which, you know, talent-wise, they may need some improvements, but they do have talent. And they've made the most out of it, plus other guys they've developed throughout the year. And I think that's contributed why they've played better down the stretch. Now, like, you know, this Sunday was a big setback. Offensively, they have the same issues that plagued them at the beginning of the year. But overall, you've seen the Giants improve as a team throughout the year. And the Washington football team, remember something here. Ron Rivera, he was in a situation where injuries happened. Quarter Cam wasn't working out. And, I think that's what eventually led to his departure in Carolina. But he was never a bad football coach. He was there for a while. They were consistent for almost the entire decade since he's been there. And so for me to see what he's doing in Washington, how he wants to build his teams. He wants to build his teams on the defensive side of the ball. Washington has one of the better defensive lines in all of the NFL. And you see that's where it starts. And then they finally got a quarterback they were confident in who can make plays. Alex Smith ain't going to lose you games. He's not a guy who's going to sit here and throw 4 picks and lose you a game. They call him Captain Checkdown. But his checkdowns get you down the field. and they put you in a position to make plays. Now, we don't know if he'll be out next Sunday. He got a little calf injury, so we'll have to see. We saw a Dwayne Haskins sighting. I don't know if that's striking fear into the people of Washington or not. We'll see, being on the bench behind Alex Smith. We'll see if he's ready, if that could affect Washington going into next week. But, when Alex Smith has played, he's played well. He's played efficient, and that's what you would want from him. So, for me, overall, I think, with the rest of the NFC East, Eagles, if somehow they won out with Jalen Hurts, that would just, let's not even talk about the playoffs with them or anything like that. Let's talk about the quarterback situation, if that was the case, because then you have a whole quarterback situation on your hands with Jalen Hurts. And the Cowboys, listen, Stephen Jones came out, said Mike McCarthy is going to be the guy. But I just feel like with all the high-priced players that they have, not having a lot of flexibility, and then it feels like there is a big coaching deficiency. I just don't see how the Cowboys get better unless they're willing to kind of shake some things up, get rid of some big money guys, take some cap hits, and try to make some changes. If they're not willing to do that, which that's going to come down to Jerry Jones, then I don't see the Cowboys really getting better from this year, in my honest opinion, unless Mike McCarthy just somehow reinvents himself in the offseason. So overall, NFC East, I don't know if I think I said this on my solo podcast for football, but I think that the NFC East could be ran by the Giants and Washington for the next couple of years because they have the most solid coaching situation right now. And they seem to have the most as built together teams as there is in the division, where potentially the Eagles can replace Doug Peterson this offseason. And like I said, if they want to keep Mike McCarthy, we know how that's going to go. So, to me, it's great to see, teams coming from the ashes and being good. It makes now whoever plays the Washington football team actually interested, or any team in the NFC East. I want to get ahead of myself here. An interesting matchup in the playoffs because, usually we would think, oh, that's an easy game for whoever plays them. But, the way they're playing, whoever comes out, Giants or Washington, could be a harder game than we think.
I think honestly, the Giants have a lot of potential because I think they do think that Daniel Jones is the future of their quarterback position. And at this point, they're not in the Trevor Lawrence Bowl or anything like that. And it's not like they're not going to rush themselves into that, discussion. What they've done this year so far is lean into old school football, win with defense, win with running the football, limit mistakes. And for the past couple of weeks, Daniel Jones has done that. They have done that. Their defense has really been flying around. They have players from the Odell trade that originally people thought was, it wasn't enough. Like Odell, we all know what's going on with Odell currently right now. It hasn't panned out perfectly, in Cleveland. But, there's a couple firsts given up. Jabril Peppers, who originally people thought was going to be a bust, has played really well. And the picks that they got for, Odell have come together. Then we have the linebacker that they signed, Leonard Williams. Linebacker or D-end? I can't remember. Linebacker. I think he plays outside linebacker. But Leonard Williams...
No, he's a D-line.
Oh, he's D-lineman? My fault. Yeah. Apparently he's been playing really well, for sure. And they also have gotten a lot of value out of, their head coach. Like, their head coaching hiring was something that people really were questioning. Like, why Joe Judge? Why not get somebody else? Like, the Patriots coaching tree hasn't really been all that great. But now we're looking and we're seeing Mike Vrabel now. We're seeing Joe Judge, who is turning some things around. And we're seeing, of course, that guy in Miami who went toe-to-toe with Chiefs today. Bright futures all ahead. The coaching tree for Belichick is definitely changing the narrative right now. And it seems like the guys who are able to make an impact in the first year, even though the season may not be going perfectly, look to be refreshing the head coaching ideology of coming from a Belichick tree. Like, we all know that the Andy Reid coaching tree has been really, people really like that coaching tree. And, the Belichick is taking some hits, but I think this time around we've gotten 3 really, really solid coaches so far in the early stages of their coaching career. But let's take a break and we'll move into more discussions about NFL topics. GSMC will be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, GSMC, we're back. We were talking about the Bill Belichick coaching tree and all of that, so let's move away because there's not too much to talk about, I want to get into what is going on with the NFC West. Why are the Rams the best team in the NFC West, for one? Who is going to actually win this division? What's going on with Kyler Murray? What's going on with Seattle? Brice, what have you been seeing from the NFC West side of things that have made you kind of concerned and also got your popcorn out, ready to see all the drama?
Well, I think now we can say 49ers are pretty much out of it. They've just had too many injuries, too much inconsistency at the quarterback position. They have a lot of questions they have to answer. Richard Sherman already came out saying he's probably not going to resign. So we're going to have to see what this San Francisco team looks like next year. It's going to be one of Kyle Shanahan's biggest challenges as a head coach. Is he really going to stick with Garoppolo next year? Is he going to try to find someone? How is this team, going to recover from the injuries that they've suffered and revamp this team so they can be just as competitive? Because you can still tell in their games, even though they've lost, they're still a very well kind of coached team. They're still competitive. It's just they have young wide receivers like Brandon Ayuk, who's played very well for them. So they have potential. They just have to get that quarterback position solid and hopefully get healthy and stay healthy next year for them to potentially still be that team that made it to the Super Bowl just a year ago, right before COVID. And then, we talk about Arizona. I think this past week was the most we've seen since the injury to Kyle Murray, his AC joint, where they've looked more like Arizona. Because even the last couple of weeks, watching Arizona Cardinal games, they never really ran the ball with Kyler Murray. And that's what I think made him so electrifying and so hard to stop, is that he could beat you with his legs. And you really never saw that. They kind of just said, hey, Kenyon Drake, Chase Edmonds, you're going to handle all the running responsibilities. And I don't think that's their offense. They still weren't back to what they were. And so, yes, there is some cause of concern. They were in trouble as Minnesota had won the game and they lost, and it was just like, oh, man, Cardinals single-handedly went from 6-2 to out of the playoffs right now. Well, right now they're still in. And so I think also, Reddick, a guy they drafted in the first round a couple of years ago, people thought he was a bust. Came back 5 sacks, I think 2, 3 forced fumbles this week. So, we forget they didn't have Chandler Jones to start the year because he's out for the year. So, they have some guys. And, Arizona as a team, to me, I came into the season saying is a wild card for me because they have talent. It's just putting it all together. They showed early. They struggled. Now if they can get back on the right track, we'll see. But, I think Arizona they just have to figure out, okay, Cliff Kingsbury has this, very innovative offense or whatever. Teams eventually catch up. Now it's on him to adjust, put them in the best position so they can continue to be effective, and put Kyler Murray in the best position to be effective as well. So we're going to have to see what happens with that. Seattle, we know the weakness of Seattle, and this has been the weakness of Seattle for however long, is their offensive line. That's the reason why they lost to the Giants, because their defensive line of the Giants got after Russell Wilson, which kept them from being able to do anything. And so that's usually the key with Seattle. If you can dominate their offensive line, you can limit the offense. Now I will admit, one thing that was really plaguing the Seahawks early in the season was defense. Their defense actually has improved tremendously since Carlos Dunlap has been there. I want to say it's been the last 5 weeks of the season. I think they lead all teams in sacks since then. And so clearly that was an issue. And now they're sacking the quarterback. Jamal Adams has been making big plays. I believe he leads all DBs in sacks. I think he has 7 sacks this year, which is unheard for a defensive back. And so, the 2 players they brought in have made an impact. You still have Bobby Wagner, the heart and soul of that defense. Listen, the secondary is still susceptible, but they've played better as a team. And that's what you look for always throughout the season. Do you play better? Now it's just that they can give Russell Wilson some protection on the offensive end. We know this offense is capable. The running backs stay healthy. They're capable. They're still in it. They have a big matchup coming up with the Rams. If they win that game, they could take back control of the division. And then going to the Rams, we always talk about Jared Goff. You don't know what you're going to get. Are you going to get bad Jared Goff or good Jared Goff? But one thing, Sean, that they always want to know is this. We have 3 running backs. Look, lately Cam Akers has been, the main guy. He's been blowing up defense. We saw what they did to New England. And defensively, they have a top 5 defense. And, they have the star defensive lineman, Aaron Donald. You have the star secondary player, top receiver. The Rams are probably a team that could be a dark horse in the playoffs who could make it to the Super Bowl again if Jared Goff plays good enough, because they have the talent around him to be good enough to get there. So for me right now, I would probably say Rams are my favorites to win the division and to get into the playoffs. Well, obviously in the playoffs, but make a run in the playoffs. And so, we'll have to see. Seattle, clearly, you can never count out Russell Wilson. The Cardinals, they're going to be fighting for a couple more weeks, see if they can build off the success. And like I said, San Francisco's just looking more towards next year.
I agree. So here's the thing, man. I feel like the Rams are the sleeper agent team in the NFC, and it's time to finally announce it. They had a weird game. They had some weird games. We understand they lost to Miami, and we understand that when Jared Goff is bad, the Rams are half a football team. But when Jared Goff is decent, at worst, they have the best defense in the NFC, and they have 2 of the best defensive players in all of football on the same side. Aaron Donald is the best player in football, day in and day out. Not best defensive player. This is, everybody says this. We all understand, but I'm going to reiterate this one more time. Aaron Donald is the best player in the NFL. He is too good. Aaron Donald is too good. I have no desire to see Andrews Pete play against Aaron Donald. That's not, no, please, God, no. There's not a player that I can name off the top of my head that is ready to deal with what Aaron Donald brings to the table. People are talking about he might be the greatest defensive player we've ever seen. This is in our generation of watching sports. I never thought I'd hear this before in football. There's been plenty of times where we hear oh, this guy is going to be an all-time great. Plenty of times in sports. I don't think in my lifetime I've ever heard a player be universally recognized as maybe one of the best defensive players literally ever. Like, not all time. I mean, like, he might be the best player we've ever seen touch the football field on the defensive side of the ball. And he's still in his prime. Like, this is insane. The Rams are the sleeper agent team in the NFC. I believe they are going to have a nice surge and win the NFC West. And it's going to be problematic for a lot of matchups soon to come. Because if they play Green Bay's weakness is the run game on defense. They can't seem to stop the run. It's been well documented that they don't seem to be really good at stopping the run. And the Rams run the football. They are going to run the football with 3 different backs all the time at will. And that defense is not here to play. They don't care about Aaron Rodgers. They don't care about Devontae Adams because everybody else, as many Packers fans and Aaron Rodgers stands have said, you know, he has no help. All he has is Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones. You know, what are we going to do? Like that. I don't know what you're going to do against that defense. The Saints have a lot of weapons, but we have no interior offensive linemen that we can trust. Aaron Donald is eating them for lunch. For sure. We already saw that Tampa Bay lost to the Rams, so I don't even have to talk about that at all. And you get pressure on Brady. Brady looks like an old man. So I'm not even worried about that. That's in the bag. I don't think anybody in the NFC West, if they make it to the wild card, is going to touch the Rams. I have a hard time seeing anybody match up well against the Rams besides potentially someone from the AFC who is the best team in football, I guess, the Chiefs, just because of their offensive firepower. Like, nobody else is really touching the Chiefs offensively. Like, we saw them score 28 unanswered points against a really good Miami Dolphins defense. And, you know, Mahomes threw 3 picks and they won the game. Like, like that's all you need to know. Like, they still won the game. Their defense hasn't necessarily been well. It's a weakness. We understand that. But I don't think there's a lot of teams that can put up, you know, 35 points regularly. Like, this is a part of the offensive game plan. This isn't like a hot zone. You know, they're not hot hand team playing. You know, we all know that they, you know, they got a special team touchdown, like on a punt return and all that stuff. But this is the reality of the situation. I think the Rams are meshing at the right time. They know their identity and they understand what they need to do. Like, they had a lot of injuries last year that hurt their offensive line and thus ruined Jared Goff's real potential to be what he's supposed to be, which is a high-end game manager. He is not Mahomes. He's not Carson Wentz when Wentz is good. Like, he's not here to throw all over the field. He's not even like a Matt Ryan. I don't even know what to call him, but he is when he's good, he is what they need him to be. And when they're on all cylinders, I really don't know a team that can beat them for real.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I mean, I guess it's safe to say the only thing stopping the Rams from coming out of the NFC is Jared Goff, I guess. You know? So, I mean, I think, you know, Sean McVay, you know, he's going to try to put Jared Goff in position every week to play the best game he can play because he understands that. And I think you're in a situation where they feel like if the running game is going, Cooper Kupp stays healthy, you know, and the defense plays the way they play, they will always have a chance in any game to win. And I think that's what they're going to be banking on when it gets to that time during that playoff push that comes after the season, regular season.
Say that one more time.
Then we're going to know, I guess, if Jared Goff can get it done again once the regular season ends and we get into the playoffs, because they have everything else around him to be, you know, that team that comes out of the NFC. Because, you know, basically, if Jared Goff plays at a well enough level, I agree with you. Everything else is, I think, more superior in terms of the way they play. Top 5 defense, great running game, good offensive line, good weapons. You just think, hey, if he doesn't mess up, they should be able to make a run.
Yeah, that's the ideology. I wouldn't know if they don't think Jared Goff is the guy. I don't really know where their direction lies because they've invested so much into Jared Goff. It's kind of like the Carson Wentz situation too, where especially last year, people were feeling like how they felt about Carson Wentz about Jared Goff last year. And look how a year has changed, just better play all around, better offensive line, better tools around him has kind of softened the narrative. I don't want to sit here and say that it's, made it easier on Goff for his criticizers, but it's definitely been held for, it's for further review now as the Carson Wentz thing has taken a whole nother turn that I've never really witnessed before for a quarterback to really be at the highs of highs, and now he's at the lows of lows. Like, this is like legit some lows stuff, and it's bad when you're making like almost $70 million guaranteed or something like that, getting put on the bench for Jalen Hurts, and now Eagles fans are praising Jalen Hurts as being the savior and the guy who's going to change this franchise around, when in reality, all the issues that Jalen Hurts came into from college is still there, and they caught the Saints on a bad week. And, I give more credit to the Philadelphia defensive line than I'm going to give to their offense. Their offense only scored 7 points in the second half, but this isn't about the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll get on a tangent later on, maybe. Brice,
yeah.
After coming from this break, we are going to talk about what happened in the Chargers game, and we're going to pivot to the AFC. GSMC will be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we're back, GSMC Football Podcast, and you know what time it is. It is your weekly therapy session, Mr. Brice. The floor is yours for, I guess, Down in the Dumps Falcons Tuesdays. Let me hear it, man. I know the Raheem Morris return is now finally put to bed because here we go. We thought that it never would happen again. Falcons blew another lead. Here we go again. The floor is yours, my friend.
I mean, we didn't necessarily blow another lead. It was a game of two teams that blow leads. Traded 3 consecutive interceptions in the fourth quarter. and then, Chargers made a play, got a field goal, and won the game. I mean, that's basically how it went. I mean, more than anything, I'm just kind of like, okay. I don't really have that much emotional reaction. I wasn't pissed or anything after the game because it was just kind of like, this is just how it goes, man. Like I wasn't really sure what to expect. I'm glad the defense is playing at the best they played all year, because they played well enough to win that game, and they played good the last few weeks, really. It's just offensively we struggled. I mean, listen, you came on this podcast, I've said Derek Cutter is the issue. I say, I mean, everybody wants him canned. They want him gone. They want him cut. You know what I'm saying? They want him finished, finito, all of that. And then, Matt's, having some issues. He's made some mistakes. Not going to act like he didn't make mistakes. He cost us yesterday. He did. But at the same time, you know, sometimes that's just how it goes. Because we could easily say, you know, watching the Saints game, Taysom Hill cost y'all offensively with turnovers and all that good stuff and unable to get. I mean, he wasn't protected, but we can make that argument as well. You can always make the argument weekly if a quarterback doesn't play well, he costs us. We talk about it with Jared Goff all the time. So, you know, for me, I just look at it like, hey, I'm honest. I'm just trying to get through the season, Ethan. I'm just trying to get to the offseason. Go ahead with clean house. All right, let's get this thing going. All right, so what are we looking at? Who? Oh, Eric Bellamy? Okay, cool. Well, I'll go with that, man. And we'll pretty much go from there. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're the last team that hires a head coach, because our head coach is playing on the best team on football right now, Kansas City. So, well, we're gonna hope for the best, man. And I just want to also say, listen, if we get rid of any of them, I've said this before, if we get rid of one of our 2 stars, I'm getting rid of Matt first before I get rid of Julio. So, because I know that's also been brought up in Falcon talk about Julio. I'm like, listen, guys, I'd rather whoever our new quarterback is have Calvin and Julio than come in. Because what if we don't move off Matt, but we get rid of Julio? I mean, unless we're bringing another playmaking receiver, I don't know why we make that move. So, for me, and especially if we're trying to become, you know, an elite offense, because it's how we're going to bring in an offensive guy next, probably need to try to keep all your offensive weapons unless you truly just think Julio will never be able to stay healthy ever again. So that's pretty much my position on the Falcons. I think we're currently like 7th, I think, because we're tied with multiple teams at 4-9. I'm just like, hey, guys, let's try to get to 4. Let's go, baby.
Well, I don't know if you're going hard enough on the current Falcons situation. There's a lot of people who maybe have depended on, if you depended on Julio Jones to save your fantasy season, maybe you just weren't ready to make it anyway. But, you know, Julio had nothing in the game. Did he even play?
Yeah, he was out this game.
Correct.
So this was a big Calvin Ridley game.
Right, it was. In fact, he almost single-handedly beat me this week, but, you know, we make strong. Round 2 in the playoffs, baby, for me, in at least one of my leagues. So,
that's fair. Same here.
You know, life is still here. We're still living. But I got to say, man, as far as the NFC South is concerned, before we go ahead and move on to the AFC, who do you think will have a brighter future currently? Your Atlanta Falcons or Tampa Bay when they let go of old man Tom, or the Carolina Panthers? Because we all know the Saints, at this point, their team is pretty talented, except for when the quarterback, you know, decides to ride into the sunset, and then we just have to live with the reality that Taysom really might be the successor. And tears in my eyes. You know, I just haven't seen enough yet to believe that's the case. But here is it. Here, what's your ranking? What's your order?
I mean, I guess potential. Well, okay. Brighter future, like actually long term, probably Panthers 1, the Falcons 2, and then Tampa 3rd. Because I feel like Bruce Arians and this Tampa Bay team is more of a win-now team. And I don't think Bruce has anything really in place for the future necessarily. A lot of the players he has are like older guys. Tom, most of his running backs. I mean, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin struggles to stay healthy. Rob's going to retire again. You know, offensively. Defensively, they're young. So they may have a future there. Offensively, I'll have to see, and that's his side of the ball. Panthers, they just have a lot of young talent. You've seen on display this year. A really young defense. Teddy's played well. You know, they're only going to get better under Matt Rule, I think. So that's why I have them first. And then Falcon-wise, it just really depends on what they do with the roster. I mean, defensively, I don't think we're going to make dramatic whole-scale changes. We have a lot of young guys. A.J. Terrell, you know, Deion Jones, he's going to be there. Alua Khan, you know, from the Ivy League. Yes, sir, Ivy League represented. You know, he's going to be there. He's been one of our best players. You know, we got some young guys who play well for us. I think it's just more of our questions are going to be on the offensive side of the ball. Again, just like kind of like Tampa, but I think it just really depends. If they're like, we're just going to make some changes, keep most of the core players intact, and then see what happens from that, we could be a good team next year, really, an easy fix. If they're like, blow this thing up, then we'll have to see. Because then I won't know what's going to go on until I see the moves that are made. So that's kind of my NFC South potential future power rankings right there.
All right. Well, let's move on to the AFC. So the Chiefs sneak a win, and a win is a win because clearly, a bad team that beats a good team, it's a tremendous win. Even if it's not the most perfect win. And if a good team, sneaks past a team that's not on their, not on their tier, it's what's going on. But, to me, a win is a win. So Chiefs got their dub. The Steelers are sliding. We have a big Monday night game between Baltimore and the Browns. So the AFC North is all in whack because now the Baltimore Ravens are in playoffs again after 2 straight losses for, the Steelers. So no more undefeated teams, of course. That's been covered. But how do you feel about Big Ben and the Steelers now after 2 weeks of a matchup that, Washington just played a good game of football, played their brand of football and got after Big Ben. And then, of course, what about them going up against a really good team in the Bills now who are striking while the iron is hot?
Pittsburgh is who we thought we'd be. Big Ben, I think they're very Big Ben reliant. They really have no running game. The receivers are dropping every ball that's thrown to them. And their defense is just piling up injuries. And I just think it's one of those, they're basically last year's New England. Started really well. Everybody's like, oh, New England. And then down the stretch kind of started to falter a little bit. Lost to Miami in week 17. Then lost to Tennessee. And it's just like, whoa. Could we see that with Pittsburgh? They'll probably, remember, they're not the number 2 seed. They're pretty much not getting it. Kansas City probably will keep that spot unless somehow y'all rise from the ashes again from last week's defeat and then say, oh, yes, the Saints are the best team in football. We beat the Chiefs. If that doesn't happen, it's pretty much all the way Chiefs number 1 seed in the AFC. So, they might get a first-round matchup. They're the number 2 seed, so they play the 7th seed, which currently right now I believe is the Miami Dolphins. I think that would be an interesting matchup between 2 teams. That's a game they could lose. The way they're playing, is there any confidence to think that they could just easily beat any team they play? Defensively, they're going to be in the game, but Miami's defense is just as good. So, or not as just as good, but they're pretty comparable defenses. So, for me, I just think Pittsburgh's kind of falling off right now, and it could lead to them basically getting eliminated early. And then you got to think about it. Do you look at this season, if you're Pittsburgh, as a successful year, top 2 record, but eliminated in the wild card? I don't think so. So, there's one guy who can turn it around. It's Mike Tomlin, because he's usually able to get the most out of his guys. But, right now they're not playing well. Injuries, no running game. We'll have to see. I'm seeing on Pittsburgh Twitter talk, man. They're saying, listen, I'm not saying we need to get rid of Big Ben, but we definitely need to draft a quarterback next year. Because I think they're seeing it too. Like, hey, we need to make this move. Because if not, we might not be the good old Pittsburgh Steelers for long.
How do you feel about Cleveland?
Cleveland, I think it's just they're to me, they're not as good defensively as St. Louis, but to me they have their identity. They want to run the football. And then they have a good front 7. Back end is sus, but a good front 7. And so, for me, I think that depending on how Baker continues to play, will basically dictate how far Cleveland can go. If he comes out tonight, remember, the last 2 times they played Baltimore, he's basically been absolutely terrible. And so if he comes out tonight and plays more like the Tennessee or the the Tennessee or the Bengal Baker, that, to me, that's 2 weeks in a row of good football. And so you got to sit here and say, oh, maybe Baker has really turned a new leaf. But it's all dependent on Baker. It's the same thing with the Rams. It's all on golf. Talent-wise on the team, they got it. It's all on golf. AFC, Baker. It's all on Baker. Browns make any noise. If they upset teams, if they make a run, it's because Baker played well. So, to me, This is a big statement game tonight for Cleveland. If they can beat Baltimore and they can establish themselves, then I think Cleveland, not only this year, but in the coming years, has a bright future.
Do you
are you still a little questioning the Brown bandwagon a little bit?
I'm questioning the Baker Mayfield thing because Baker hasn't. We'll see tonight, of course, and we'll all know by when this podcast comes out what he does in this game. But we've all questioned, we understand that Baker is a player that really strives when he doesn't have to do too much, when he doesn't have to run around and make plays. We keep him controlled, and he knows what his reads are, and he isn't under a lot of pressure. When he has pressure in his face, we have not seen good things out of Baker Mayfield still yet this season. The last couple of games where he's really been, or his best games this year have been when he is not under pressure. Last week, he had no pressure next to him. Titans were horrible. They're the worst, pressure team in the NFL, probably. So this week, he's going to have some pressure, and we'll have to see and reevaluate. But I'm not going to take anything away from what he's done with no pressure. He's been a solid quarterback when, he has time in the pocket, and that's fine. So they're going to continue to build their offensive line to keep that sort of thing going and then keep the defense going. Of course, they can have a skeleton of, what the Rams do, because look at it this way. They have one of the best sack masters in the NFL in Myles Garrett. They have a couple guys in the secondary that can get after it. They have good offensive linemen. Their offensive line is real, and it needs to be respected. We understand what Nick Chubb and, of course, what Kareem Hunt do with that offensive line. And we see that Jarvis Landry is starting to really turn it on here. And they have weapons. They have your guy Austin Hooper, even though he hasn't necessarily been 100% involved in everything as of yet, injuries and all that stuff. But they have guys that can get some stuff done. So I'm not going to rule out Cleveland of being potentially something, a thing, right? I'm just going to put it as a thing. I'm not going to say Cleveland can't be a thing for years to come, but, it's going to have to also come with the improvement of play from Baker Mayfield as a whole. But let us take a break real quick, get to the last segment so we can keep covering the AFC, because there are also some other things going on, and we got to look at the rankings. We got to look at some potential coaching things that might change. GSMC will be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, we're back. GSMC Football Podcast. Brice has a question that he wanted to bring to my attention. Brice, go ahead, man. Let it be known. Speak your piece.
All right, sir. So, obviously we were talking about your quarterback situation in New Orleans. So I'm just going to throw this out there. So if you had the option, would you take Taysom Hill, or if Baker was available, would you take Baker if you had to pick? On your current team, so constructed around him and everything like that.
Probably Taysom, but it's not because I think that Taysom is is going to turn out to be something more than what he is right now. It's more so just the offense has been prepping for the Taysom type for a long time. I still am of the mindset that Jalen Hurts should be a Saint. I don't know how it was going to happen. I just think Jalen Hurts should have been a Saint, and we should have seen Jalen Hurts in the Saints uniform, because I think Jalen Hurts would have done some things even more exciting. But then again, Taysom has been in his offense for so long, and he's done all these things, and we understand what's going to happen. But this is the case. This is what we're going to get. And I just don't believe that Baker Mayfield would succeed in this offense, because interior pressure from the defense would be his kryptonite, and our interior offensive linemen are not good right now. So I would not want to see Baker Mayfield on this team, pretty much due to that. Other than that, though, it's honestly just not that exciting. Even though I did say last week that the NFL is better when Baker Mayfield plays well. So, take that as you will.
Yeah, I got you. I just wanted to see how you would feel about it. You know what I'm saying? Since those Saint QB power rankings for 2021, for some reason I want to say Jason Taylor. Taysom Hill is solidifying himself right now as number one, and then we'll have to figure out who else can jump into the picture.
Sure.
It looks like it's not going to be Jameis.
I don't know what's going to be with Jameis, honestly. I don't know if Sean Payton doesn't trust him. I don't know if Sean Payton... Honestly, I think it's the fact that they had to give Taysom this chance. Because if they didn't give Taysom the chance, the likelihood is that we never would have seen Taysom try out as the Saints quarterback. So this was the reasonable time, I guess, that the coaching staff, that Sean Payton chose to be like, this is what we need to do in order to evaluate for the future. Because at this point, we understand, this is it for Drew. We cannot bring Drew back next year. I promise you, if we bring Drew back next year, the fandom will be in shambles again, and we'll just be ready for more pain. Because we've seen noodle arm Drew. We've seen 13 broken rib Drew. We've seen it, or should I say 13 functional rib Drew. We get it. The arm talent is already diminished, and he can't move, man. You've seen it time and time again. These old quarterbacks that can't move have a plateau that they can't get over anymore, right? It's offensive linemen are not being taught to hold people in the pocket, to keep a pocket together for as long as they used to. And even then, it wasn't like they were holding it that long, because Drew Brees could move. Tom Brady could move around in the pocket a little bit better. Phillip Rivers could do some things in the pocket. Big Ben is a statue. He's always been a statue, but at least he was strong enough, to push people off in the pocket. Now we're seeing the league move towards quote unquote mobile guys. And I mean by mobile, I mean guys who are not Lamar Jackson mobile, not Kyler Murray mobile, but guys who can, use their legs to their advantage, not just to run upfield and get some yardage, not escape the pocket and get some yards, but more so extend plays with their legs, more a la Russell Wilson, because it takes it doesn't necessarily take pressure off offensive linemen, right? Because you kind of have to know when your quarterback is escaping out of the pocket. That's a skill to be able to still block and not have holding, or know that, guys aren't moving out of the pocket. It's a tough job, so to speak. But I will say, when things are well and things are good, and this is what your quarterback does, then it becomes another weapon for you, rather than, somebody always attempting to keep you inside the pocket. They don't have to worry about keeping contained. They can let you run outside because you're not that fast or you're not that mobile, and they can just start teeing off on you. And that's the biggest Achilles heel to a lot of these teams. Once you get pressure on a guy like a Tom Brady, like a Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, at times when pressure is on them, they've all looked old, like old men. So that's the problem.
Yeah, definitely. I get it. I mean, hey, I guess that'll be your off-season story for the Saints. Just all right, so who we going with? Is it Taysom or someone else? So I completely get that, man. I definitely do, for sure. But I do want to bring up something else. I just also want to bring up that Jonathan Taylor had another big week this week, and He is one of the main reasons why I'm also in the second round of the playoffs. That's all.
Listen, congratulations to you. My point still holds strong that Marlon Mack still would have been the number one guy, and we would have seen a running back by committee system, and maybe they would have let Marlon Mack go in the end. But Jonathan Taylor was not good for 3/4 of the season. He's just now only kind of turning this on. I still feel solid in my truth. That's all I have to say. That is all I have to say on that. Let's give me your top 3 in the AFC right now.
Top 3 teams, in my opinion, in the AFC, probably to me, Kansas City, Buffalo, and then honestly, I'm gonna go with Tennessee just because I think if Tennessee and Pittsburgh played again today, I think Tennessee would beat them this time around. I think the offensive woes for Pittsburgh are coming out, and the injury to their defense. Now we know Tennessee's defense isn't anything to be like, oh my God, they're so great. But I mean, offensively, Derrick Henry's been going off, and so now that Derrick Henry is now King Henry at the end of the year, I think that and Tannehill making some big plays to A.J. Brown over the top would probably be the difference in that. So I'd probably go with Tennessee. And then, so that'd be my top 3. How about you?
Okay, so the Chiefs are factually number 1 just because of their offensive firepower. I would have to say number 2 is probably the Bills, even though their running game is kind of weak. And I don't like teams going into the playoffs with weak running games, which is why I probably would put number 3 as the Titans. But let's just say Cleveland wins tonight, right? That run game is scary how good it can be. You don't want to get to a team that can really run the football in the middle of the winter in playoff time. That's all I have to say. I'm not putting them in any rankings. All I'm saying is Cleveland knows their identity. They don't want to make mistakes. Teams that can run the ball in the playoffs always find success. You've seen it with the Patriots. They started off with the run game. You've seen it with Kansas City. One of their, even though they don't run the foot, they ran the football a lot the past 2 years. They kind of still do, but in a different way now. But they've always depended on the run game to really get them going. You need a balanced attack. And a really solid run game that isn't 3.7 yards per carry isn't going you can't have sub 4 yards a carry in the playoffs. That's not going to get it done. That's why people still have a high stock in, Tennessee, for the Tennessee Titans, because their run game, Derrick Henry is the best running back in the league. That's just kind of what it is, even though he had a bad game against Cleveland. That's more so, that's not really on him per se, more so just what happened in the game, and they had to move away from running the ball. But as we saw this week, what he can do in a half. Derrick Henry is just that guy. That's a hard thing to kind of overcome for any sort of defense, and that's just kind of like the body blows in a prize fight, right? The more you run the ball, the more tired the defense gets. We've seen it time and time again. 2 of the best teams in the NFC in the past 2 years to go all the way were run commit teams. Even though it didn't work out for the Rams, didn't really work out for San Francisco in the end, their run games were legit and they were real. And that is something that you got to always keep in mind for when it comes to these sort of, rankings going into the postseason. Because at this point, this is all about postseason, getting to the postseason. I think a lot of these teams are really just wanting the postseason to start. I know I do. I want this Chiefs game to just not happen. I just wish we just got in the playoffs. I don't care the seeding. Yeah, it would have been nice for the Saints to have the first seed and get a bye, but I'll tell you this, as any other fan would probably say, I do not like it when my team is in the spotlight. I can't stand when people start betting on the Saints, because that's when we start, to disappoint. That's when we start to, embarrass ourselves on TV every single time. We saw it in the beginning of the year. when we were supposed to beat the Raiders because we all have this headcanon that the Raiders are terrible. They stink. They're not good. And then, boom, the Raiders beat us. And then all of a sudden, oh, the Saints, they stink. We should have never trusted them. That is what it is. You know, then they lose to the Packers. And then like, oh, yeah, they're not good. And then they went into obscurity. Then they roll off 9 straight wins. And then we lose to the Eagles. And now here we are again. Because people thought, oh, yeah, the Saints, they're beating the Eagles all the way through. But when we play teams, of course, like the Buccaneers, who everybody doubted us, look at you, look around you. We started this. We created this. We beat them down on national television when everybody counted us out, right? So continue to count us out, please, all the way through, please. I want no favoritism, none. I can imagine as a Falcons fan, during your runs, you wanted no favoritism. You wanted to be the underdog. You wanted to be the team that wasn't counted upon to win.
This is very true. I feel like most teams play better as underdogs just because of they don't believe in us. Oh, they think we're not that great. Okay, we'll show them. Remember, when they were doubting y'all, what the defense say? They said, oh, Tampa Bay about to come in here and run us out of here and blow us out. People were really out here projecting a blowout. And it's just like, did we just forget the Saints are one of the top teams in the NFC? So I'm sure also plus we're in a position, we want people to sleep on us so we can shock the world, show out, and do what we do. So your point definitely stands.
All right, Brice. This is your hot seat corner. Who's on the hot seat for the remainder of the season?
Pretty much outside of Adam Gase and them, probably Doug Peterson. Should be Mike McCarthy. And Matt Nagy.
Went pretty, I think those are pretty chalk there, huh?
I mean,
pretty tail of the tape.
It's just, at this point in the year, though, we pretty much know, okay, he's probably gone. He's definitely gone. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, well, if he just wins a couple of games, maybe. No, it's over at this point, sir. You're done. You're about to be cut. All right? It's over for you. So.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Would you, what about anything, let's not say coach specific, like who are some players that you think might be on the outs of their current situation if they don't turn around their play?
If Jimmy G comes back, he'll be main guy. Gardner Minshew, even though he'll be back this week for Jacksonville, he hasn't had a bad year, but they're going to probably draft for Justin Fields, and so just by default, he'll probably be on the move. Sam Darnold. I've noticed I'm names on quarterbacks here. He could. Everybody's kind of pretty much saying, yeah, they're going with Trevor Lawrence. Sam's about to get traded. So, if anything, I just feel like those players are guys who are just playing now to try to make themselves look good for another team and say, hey, come get us. Let us be our starter. Also Cam Newton, because we've seen the Cam offense.
Yeah, I think Cam is done. He's cooked, man. He cannot throw the football, man. I don't know if it's injury.
It's going to be that interesting point, bro, of just we know they don't have wide receivers, and so people are like, just if he had a better offensive team, would he still be this putrid? That's what some people are going to still say, because it's just like, do we really think somebody else could have came in here and did that much better than what he's doing? Because, if you think about it, they have a top running game because of him, but not a good passing game. So now what if you brought in a guy who was a good passer but couldn't run? Running game probably wouldn't be as good, but would they really be that much better? Obviously they wouldn't be throwing for 79 yards, but you know what I mean? It's just like, it's kind of one of those things where it's just like, yeah, it looks like he's done, but I don't know, man. I think he could still maybe retain a backup job in the league, probably just be Robert Griffin III for the rest of his career. Just be there.
Yeah, Cam just he's done, man. That's just all I have to say.
He's selling, ain't he?
I don't even say he's selling, man. This is just the reality situation is, man. Cam can't read pressure, he can't throw. It's just pain. That's all it is. But For the GSMC Football Podcast, thank you all for listening. This will be it for the week for me and Brice, as far as our, keeping it together in the road of duo podcast, man. So,
can I say something?
Go ahead, man.
Yeah, man. I just want to say, this is my guy Ethan's last show here at GSMC, and I just want to say, Ethan, that I appreciate working with you for this past year. Really appreciate doing a podcast with you. It's a joy. Talk about football with you, man. And I wish you the best in your future endeavors, and hope for nothing but success for you into the future.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's the last week for me here. So 2 fantasy shows, and then I'll be done. So this is it's all been fun. It's a fun ride. So for GSMC, don't forget to like, subscribe, share the podcast. This is it from me and Brice for this week. I'll see you all soon. GSMC, we're out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.